First story. No, you really can't get a ticket here. True story. In 1988, I was an extra on the movie Midnight Run with Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin. We were working at Los Angeles International Airport overnight, and a bunch of extras and I were supposed to be travelers getting a ticket at, I think it was United. So United rented us one of their otherwise closed ticket counters at the far end of the airport, and one female extra was given a United uniform to wear during the shooting. So we extras lined up with our bags, suitcases, shoulder bags, and just looking like we're waiting in line to check in, right? Well, after a number of takes, some guy walked up behind us and got in line. We knew he wasn't an extra because we knew all of our own. So we politely told him we were extras. We were shooting a movie and he wouldn't be able to get a ticket. We pointed out the real United counters where he could. Well, the line was moving fast. Of course, nothing needed to be done other than the extra United agent handing fake tickets to us. So he stayed in line, despite all of us telling him he was wasting his time. Finally, he got up to the ticketing agent and she said to him, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't give you a ticket. We're shooting a movie. I'm an extra and this terminal isn't even open." Well, Mr. Mistaken Lion became Mr. Entitled Moron, and he demanded a manager. An assistant director on the film heard him and wandered over and asked him what was going on. When the guy tried to bluster, we all told the assistant director that every one of us had told him he couldn't get a ticket in our line. The guy kept trying to argue when the assistant director just said, "Listen, they all told you couldn't get a ticket and you ignored them all? Stop harassing my actors and get over to United before I call security." And yep, after that he just left like the idiot he is. God, the brain on some people. Next story. Entitled Mother Almost Kills Me at Her Wedding Because Allergies Aren't Real. So this is a story my mom always used to tell me, seeing as it happened back when I was like 2 years old. At the time I had 2 allergies, peanuts and tree nuts. When I was younger I also had eggs and wheat. My mom had a work friend, the entitled mother of the story, who was getting married, and she invited pretty much everyone that worked at her office. And by invited I mean told everyone to come. And also to bring gifts upwards of $200. What the hell? So my mom asked the entitled mother if the food at the wedding was not free, which the entitled mother said yes. Or was it? The entitled mother, ever since my mom has known her, she has always thought that allergies were just kids being picky. No matter how much evidence you will put up, she wouldn't just take it. She often said that if those kids need EpiPens just because they are so picky, why doesn't my son, she's been divorced, have it when he eats broccoli? Not even lying, she actually said this. So because of this, my parents were skeptical, and of course brought my 2 EpiPens to the wedding. At the time everyone was snacking and eating the food, I decided to eat a tiny bit of the cake, which the entitled mother specifically said was not free again to my parents. So I took a small bite and what do you know? Within seconds hives begin popping up all over me. I start absolutely wailing, seeing as I'm now having trouble breathing. And of course the entitled mother walks up to us as my mom is rushing to get my EpiPen out and put it into me. Then she says in the most triumphant tone, "Ah, see? He's just picky. That's all. I had to put some peanuts into that cake just to show you." And of course as the ambulance is arriving she says, Stop. He's a picky child. If he needs to go to the hospital for being picky, then take my son as well." I kid you not. If this couldn't get any more ridiculous, the entitled mother lunges towards the paramedics that attempts to literally take me away from them. This was a futile attempt as literally every other person at the wedding ended up pinning her down and gave me back to the paramedics, and off I went to the hospital with my parents in tow. And here is the best part. The entitled mother was in when she tried to get back to the wedding and continue it, was left at the altar. Who wouldn't leave her? As well, she was fired from her job once her boss heard about the incident. Sweet, 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 sweet karma. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I have a ton of other stories on a similar topic, but I just had to post this one first. Update. Last night my family and I were talking about this incident, and so when my mom looked the lady up on Facebook, we found out that she worked at the nearby McDonald's. Anyone say I go check in on the entitled mother? Next story. How I stopped an ex-roommate from taking food off my plate. I used to live with a roommate a few years ago. She was a friend of mine for a very long time, and she had some habits I was unaware of until I lived with her. One of my last favorites was her eating habits. This girl ate like a pig. She never ever closed her lips while chewing, and would always take more than her fair share if there was a shared meal. She would do things like cook steaks over and over in the same pan, leave the grease/butter in the pan on the stove in between for days/weeks, and then got mad at my cat for jumping up there to eat some of it. I never ate her cooking because I didn't trust it all for obvious reasons. The worst habit though was taking food off of your plate while you were eating. I resigned to eating in my room or outside just to avoid this. The dog begged less than she did. I asked her to stop so many times and she never listened to me. So this is how I fixed it, and also where I get really pity. There were two things I know about this woman. 1. She's got the palate to a toddler. Salt and pepper on a dry piece of meat, ketchup is spicy, fresh herbs who? And 2, she loves mac and cheese. So this is what I did. Unlike her, I live for spicy food. I grow some crazy hot peppers every year, just love the feeling of a toasty mouth. I was at the store and found some pepper jack cheese. Not any pepper jack though. Ghost pepper jack. I brought that bad boy home and made some mac and cheese. I went the whole 9 yards with it too, with the crusted top and everything. I waited until just before she got home from work and sat my butt down with a nice plate of my spicy mac and cheese. She walked in to see me eating this stuff and this time actually asked me if she could have some of it. I casually told her that I didn't mind at all, but just neglected to inform her that the cheese did indeed have a kick. Even for me, I was struggling to eat this stuff with a straight face. She took a huge bite out of it. Her reaction was unchanged at first, and then it started to twist. I think that's really the only appropriate description of that facial expression. Her face got bright red, and I watched the tears and beads of sweat form on her forehead. As she ran to the kitchen for milk, I casually said, "You know, that stuff does have a bit of a kick to it. I probably should have warned you." She eventually came back with many new and creative insults, but she never took food from me ever again. Do what you gotta do. Next story. I suggested to my parents that they sell a bunch of my brother's stuff to get some of their money back for his rampage, and they did not hesitate. But wait, there's more. Well, a while ago someone here commented the idea that my parents should sell a bunch of my brother's stuff. So I talked to my parents about how they could probably recoup some of their losses from the first day rampage by selling a lot of my brother's stuff. I was surprised by how readily they agreed it was a good idea. I mean, it was like a light bulb moment for them. Then over the weekend they had a big garage sale. They sold my brother's bike, his video game systems, everything. I went to help out with the sale and could hear my brother crying in his room. All of the video game systems he had were sold. And I mean, there were a lot of them. He had a GameCube, a Wii, a 3DS, a Switch, PS2, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and a ton of games for all of them. And they sold all of them. I was pretty tempted to buy something from the sale myself, but I knew if my brother were to be made aware that I had something he used to own, who knows what he might do. So I held back. The bike alone went for $30. They also sold his TV, his RC cars, his drone, and pretty much anything else electronic he owned. They are in the process of selling his gaming PC online now as well. There is a cheap laptop too, but it was mainly used for school and he was denied access to it for anything else. My parents told me that my brother's room had been stripped of everything but the essentials. While I was visiting during the sale, my brother walked out of his room once, saw me, and then ran back into his room crying loudly. I heard fake crying from him when I heard it, and it was as fake as it gets. My parents know this too and have not fallen for his game. I asked them if he was going to be sent to therapy, and they said they really have no choice but to do that. And they fully admitted this was all their fault for enabling him for so long. I could have rubbed it in their faces, but I think the look they saw on my face was enough that they understood. For the past several years, they have been in progressively worse and worse denial about their bad parenting. Friends and family have been telling them for a long time now that they went too far, spoiling my brother. And that not only would it come back on them one day, but it would also mean that my brother may be incapable of functioning as an adult. And if that's the case, it expects someone to provide for his every need forever. And I would not become his caretaker when they become too old. My brother hadn't shown much improvement over the next few weeks. He was still being a brat, fake crying, getting into more trouble, and even stole another kid's cell phone at school. He was caught playing on it in his closet, and my parents had to return it to the school to find out who it belonged to. Last week I had an idea and suggested a family intervention. My parents were hesitant when I brought it up, but they reluctantly agreed to it. I'm sure their hesitation was because an intervention would put them on the spot along with my brother. Then, on the next possible day, all close family and some friends could gather at my parents' house, and we formed a circle of chairs in the living room, initially without my brother in the room. My aunt spoke first, and oh boy did she let them have it. She'd written an entire speech that we all silently listened to. My parents tried to interject from time to time, but were silenced. When it came to my turn to speak, I also read a speech I composed, basically repeating everything I've told on Reddit thus far, and plenty more. My grandparents went next, and it just sort of followed down the line from there. My mother was in tears, and my father just held her. They both apologized to me heavily, and said they were terrible parents and that they ruined my childhood. I will never get that back. My aunt loudly stated that it should not have come to this for them to realize their own hypocrisy. And from now on they need to do better, not only for my sake, but especially for the sake of my brother, so he can grow up normal. My brother was brought into the room next, and he was seated away from my parents because my mother would have an urge to cuddle him when he was upset. It didn't take long for the family to lay into my brother. He tried fighting us a lot, but when excuses like, "If only they just let me have my way," were about all he could say, we all let him have it. About how that's not how the world works. He tried getting help from our mother, but she refused to look at him. He started huffing and acting like he was hyperventilating, then intentionally fell to the floor. It's not the first time he's done this. My aunt just told him to stop milking it and get up. He screamed at her that we were all ruining his life, that he wishes we were all dead. My parents were horrified. My brother refused to get up off the floor and kept breathing heavily to pretend to have some sort of attack. So everyone just left him laying there while they each said their piece about why they were there to him. He screamed at random a few times, but didn't move from where he'd laid down. Eventually, everyone started leaving, and my parents had to actually drag my brother back to his room because he refused to get up off the floor. He's not used to people having no sympathy for him, especially from our parents. This is gonna be a long uphill battle. My aunt has offered to chip in for therapy, and my parents have taken her up on it. Let's hope therapy does my brother some good. Seriously, let's hope therapy does my brother some good.